Welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're doing exactly what our name suggests. We're plunging into a really interesting piece of work.
Yeah.
You sent over this document from the Council of Europe. It was published back in, December 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got this title, El Impacto de la IA en la Relación Doctor-Paciente.
Right.
Now, for those of us whose Spanish is a little rusty, that basically means the impact of AI on the doctor-patient relationship.
Exactly. And that's what we're digging into today.
Yeah, think of this as us kind of wading through the report, pulling out the key stuff, the bits that really matter as AI starts showing up more and more in your healthcare.
Right. It's less about the super technical policy ins and outs and more about understanding the big shifts. What could this actually mean for, say, your next checkup? Or even just how you think about health tech.
We're trying to break it down, make it clear, maybe even a little bit interesting, how AI is fitting into this very, very human thing that is healthcare.
Yeah, it's a fascinating intersection.
Okay, so right at the start, the report makes a really key point. It says, look, even though we're looking at AI to help with all the pressures in medicine, things like waiting lists, costs.
Yeah, the system's under strain.
Exactly. But the basic reason you go to a doctor, that hasn't changed. You need help. You're feeling vulnerable. That's constant.
Fundamentally, yeah.
What is changing, though, is how that help might get delivered and maybe who or what is involved. It's not always just you and a human doctor anymore. AI is stepping onto the stage.
And that entrance, according to the Council of Europe, brings up some pretty big questions, especially around, fundamental rights.
Right. Okay.
They've basically flagged 6 key areas where AI hitting healthcare could have a significant impact. These are like the main themes we really need to get our heads around.
6 themes. Okay, lay them out for us. What are we talking about?
All right. So first, could AI actually make healthcare less equal, create bigger gaps in access?
Okay. Inequality.
Second, transparency. Will doctors, and crucially, will you, the patient, actually understand why an AI is suggesting something?
Can we see inside the box?
Kinda, yeah. Third, bias. The risk that AI systems pick up and maybe even amplify existing societal biases. Big one.
Huge. Okay.
Fourth, is there a danger that the focus shifts too much to data and your own personal story, your feeling of well-being, gets diluted?
Lost in the numbers. Got it.
Fifth, what about relying too much on AI? Does that lead to automation bias? Do doctors get de-skilled? And if something goes wrong, who's actually liable?
Yeah, the responsibility question. Okay.
And finally, number 6, privacy. Always a big one. How does all this AI analysis and data collection impact your right to privacy?
Phew. Okay, that's quite a list. Inequality, transparency, bias, the patient's story, automation and liability, and privacy.
Those are the core challenges the report dives into.
All right, let's tackle the first one then. Inequality in access to high-quality healthcare.
Right. So the Council of Europe points out, pretty reasonably, that AI won't just appear everywhere in healthcare overnight, right?
No, probably not evenly.
Exactly. Some places, maybe big city hospitals or regions that are really into tech, they might adopt these tools much faster. Others might lag behind.
Okay, so what's the worry there?
Well, the worry is creating new kinds of health divides. If you happen to live near a clinic with the latest AI diagnostic gadget, maybe you get quicker, potentially more accurate diagnoses for some things.
Sounds good so far.
But what if someone in a more remote area or at a less well-funded hospital doesn't have that? Could they end up getting a sort of second-tier standard of care, maybe even less face-to-face time with doctors because resources are being funneled into these AI systems elsewhere?
I see the potential gap opening up.
And the report asks this really interesting question, too. If an AI is effectively making a diagnostic or treatment recommendation, should the people who built that AI be held to the same kind of professional ethical standards as your doctor? Doctors are bound by things like the Oviedo Convention, which protects patient rights.
So holding the tech creators accountable in the same way. That is interesting.
It brings up that deep question of accountability, yeah. And just basic fairness. If AI becomes part of what defines good healthcare, how do we make sure everyone benefits, not just people in certain places or institutions?
Right, avoiding a postcode lottery for AI healthcare. Okay, let's move to the second theme. Transparency to health professionals and patients. This feels fundamental.
It really is. Think about informed consent. It's the bedrock, right? Your doctor explains things, you understand, you agree.
Yeah.
But what happens when an AI is part of that process? Maybe it flags something on a scan or suggests a particular drug. How well can your doctor actually explain why the AI reached that conclusion?
especially as you mentioned with those black box systems.
Exactly, the black box problem. Sometimes, even the developers don't have a simple step-by-step explanation for how the AI got from A to B. It's just too complex internally.
So what does that mean for me, the patient?
Well, the report asks, should you always be told when AI is involved in your care? Even for seemingly background tasks like risk scoring when you check into the hospital.
Should it be flagged somehow?
Yeah, or even should the AI system itself sort of announce itself, like a little pop-up saying, AI analysis contributed to this result. It's about knowing who or what is contributing to decisions about your health.
It does feel different if you can't ask why in a meaningful way, which kind of leads us neatly into the third theme, risk of social bias in AI systems.
Yes, this is a really critical one. AI systems learn from data. That's how they work.
Right, they're trained on vast amounts of information.
But what if that information, that data, already contains biases that exist out there in society?
Then the AI learns the biases.
It can, yeah. And potentially worse, it can sometimes amplify them or apply them consistently and systematically in a way humans might not. The report uses the example of historical clinical trials, often underrepresenting women or people of color.
Okay, I see. So if an AI is trained mainly on data from, say, white men for a specific heart condition,
It might be less accurate at spotting it or recommending the best treatment for a woman or someone from a different ethnic background presenting with the same condition. The AI just hasn't seen enough examples.
and the report says this isn't just like a technical bug, right?
No, exactly. It's reflecting deeper societal inequalities that are getting baked into these seemingly objective systems. It's a mirror to our existing problems.
Okay, give me another concrete example.
Sure. Think about AI used for dermatology, analyzing skin conditions from photos. If it's mostly trained on images of lighter skin tones.
It might miss signs of skin cancer or misdiagnose something on darker skin.
Precisely. That's a well-documented concern. And the report really stresses how difficult this makes the job for doctors. They need to use these powerful tools, but also be vigilant that the tools aren't accidentally making health disparities worse.
And just anonymizing the data isn't always enough, is that right?
Apparently not. The report suggests that even if you remove obvious things like names, other data points can act as proxies, allowing the AI to indirectly pick up on those historical biases linked to race, gender, or socioeconomic status.
Wow. Okay, so technology isn't neutral, even if it looks like just code and data.
Definitely not. The data has a history, and the AI learns that history.
All right, moving to the fourth theme, dilution of the patient's account of well-being. Tell me about this one.
This is about the human side, really. With AI being so good at analyzing huge amounts of data sensor readings, test results, images, there's a potential risk.
Or risk that.
That the patient's own story, their subjective experience of feeling unwell, their narrative about what's happening to them, might get pushed aside a bit.
Because it's not easily quantifiable.
Exactly. The focus might shift towards what the machines can measure, things that fit neatly into algorithms, potentially overlooking really important context, or the nuances a doctor picks up just by talking to you and building rapport.
Like, my Fitbit shows I slept badly, but it doesn't know I was up worrying about a deadline.
Perfect example. The data point restless sleep is there, but the why is missing. And that why might be crucial for understanding your overall health. The report suggests AI acting as a mediator could actually get in the way of building trust and that kind of tacit understanding between you and your doctor.
That human connection piece seems vital.
It often is, yeah.
Okay, on to number 5. Risk of automation bias, descaling, and displaced liability. That's a mouthful.
It is, but it covers some interconnected worries. Let's break it down. First, automation bias.
Okay.
That's our tendency as humans to sometimes overtrust complex technology. If a sophisticated AI spits out a diagnosis, a doctor might be tempted to just accept it, maybe even if it slightly contradicts their own judgment.
Trusting the machine too much.
Yeah. Then there's de-skilling. If doctors constantly rely on AI for tasks like interpreting scans or suggesting diagnoses, could their own skills in those areas start to atrophy over time?
Like using a calculator for basic maths and getting rusty.
Sort of, yeah. Losing that hands-on experience and critical thinking muscle. And then the really naughty part, liability.
Whose fault is it if the AI gets it wrong?
Exactly. If an AI recommendation leads to patient harm, who carries the can? Is it the tech company that developed the algorithm, the hospital that bought and implemented the system, the doctor who acted on the AI's suggestion?
It's not clear-cut at all.
Not remotely. The report kind of paints this picture of a doctor maybe getting into the habit of just clicking accept on the AI's output without doing their own deep dive. If that output is flawed, well, the consequences could be severe for the patient.
So the report pushes for
What?
better testing.
Definitely. Really robust, independent testing and validation standards are needed, essentially to replace some of the safety checks that currently rely on human clinical expertise and judgment. We need to trust the tools if we're going to rely on them.
Makes sense. You need guardrails.
Okay.
Okay, final theme, impact on the right to privacy.
Right. The privacy question looms large over almost anything involving AI and data.
Because AI needs data to work. Lots of it.
Tons of it. And in healthcare, that data is incredibly sensitive. Your medical history, test results, genetic information, it's deeply personal.
So while using this data can lead to better AI, better diagnoses, new treatments.
It also creates significant privacy risks. The report reminds us that laws, like the Oviedo Convention again, already recognize how sensitive health info is and establish a duty of confidentiality.
But AI complicates things.
It does. There are new questions about how data is used, not just for your care right now, but for training future AI models. And even if data is anonymized, the report warns that with powerful AI techniques, sometimes it's possible to re-identify individuals by linking different data sets together. The risk isn't zero.
De-anonymization. Yeah, I've heard about that.
And the report briefly touches on things like the EU's GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and updates to the Oviedo Convention itself, which try to give individuals more rights and control over how their data is processed, especially by automated systems.
So there are legal frameworks trying to keep up.
Trying, yes. But it's a moving target because the technology evolves so quickly and the sheer volume of data being generated keeps increasing. It's an ongoing challenge.
Okay, so those are the 6 big challenges flagged by the Council of Europe. Now, did the report just list problems? Or did it suggest any solutions or ways forward?
No, it definitely moves towards recommendations. It puts forward several ideas for common ethical standards to try and build what it calls trustworthy AI in healthcare.
Trustworthy AI. I like the sound of that. What did they suggest?
Well, one key area was around intelligibility requirements for informed consent. Basically making AI understandable.
Getting past the black box problem.
Trying to, yes. The report talks about different kinds of explanations, like explaining how an AI model generally works versus explaining why it gave one specific recommendation for you.
Ah, the difference between the general blueprint and the specific reason for my result.
Exactly. And for patient consent, it argues that simpler local explanations, the why, for your specific case, are probably much more useful than trying to explain the entire complex model.
Makes sense. I don't need the full engineering schematic, just why it flagged my scan.
Right. It also suggests, where feasible, trying to use AI models that are inherently easier to interpret, though it admits that's often technically harder to achieve, especially for the most powerful AI techniques.
Okay, so better explanations. What else?
Another major recommendation was for a public register of medical AI systems for transparency.
Like a database people can look up?
Precisely. To boost public awareness and trust, they propose a public list of AI systems being used in healthcare.
What information would be in it?
Things like, what's the AI supposed to do? Who made it? What kind of methods does it use, roughly? How was it tested? And crucially, how are its outputs actually being used by doctors? Is it just an aid, or does it have more decision-making power?
That sounds really useful, like knowing the ingredients.
Yeah, it mirrors similar ideas for transparency and how algorithms are used in other public services, just making it less hidden.
Okay, transparency through registration. Any other big recommendations?
Yes, a really important and quite thorny one, collection of sensitive data for bias and fairness auditing.
Ah, so this links back to the bias problem we discussed.
Directly. The report acknowledges this tension. To find and fix bias in AI related to things like race or gender, you often need to collect data on race and gender.
But collecting that sensitive data has its own privacy implications and risks.
Exactly. It's a real ethical tightrope. The report emphasizes that just collecting more sensitive data isn't a magic fix for bias. You need a real commitment from developers and institutions to actually use that data to identify problems and then take steps to rectify the inequalities.
So don't just collect it for the sake of testing. Have a plan to act on the findings.
Yes. It cautions against collecting sensitive data purely for testing if there isn't a clear strategy and the will to address any biases that are uncovered. It has to lead to action.
Understandable, interpretable AI, a public register, and careful, purposeful collection of sensitive data to fight bias. Those seem like solid starting points.
They are. They represent concrete steps towards navigating those challenges we outlined earlier.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the Council of Europe's thinking, what are the main takeaways for our listeners, for the learner tuning in?
I think the biggest takeaway is that AI in healthcare is incredibly promising, but it's also really complex. It's not just about cool new tech. It brings fundamental ethical and practical challenges we have to grapple with.
It's not plug and play.
Definitely not. The report really hammers home that things like ensuring fair access, keeping things transparent, actively fighting bias, protecting the human side of care, figuring out responsibility, and guarding privacy. These aren't optional extras. They have to be central as AI becomes more common in medicine.
And those recommendations we just discussed, intelligibility, public registers, careful data collection, they offer pathways toward building that trust.
They do. There are potential ways to ensure AI serves healthcare values rather than undermining them.
Ultimately, the Council of Europe seems to be saying, let's harness the power of AI, but let's not lose sight of the core values of the doctor-patient relationship in the process.
Exactly. Things like trust, respect, focusing on the individual's well-being. It argues that efficiency and tech advancement shouldn't trump human rights or the basic moral integrity of medicine.
Yeah, keeping the care in healthcare even as the technology changes.
Well put. It's about navigating this evolution thoughtfully.
So hopefully this discussion has given everyone a clearer picture of the key issues and considerations around AI in medicine as seen through the lens of this important European report.
It's a conversation that's definitely not over. It's really just getting started in many ways.
Absolutely. And listener awareness, your engagement with these topics is really vital as we figure out the path forward.
Couldn't agree more. Understanding this helps everyone participate in shaping a future where AI genuinely improves health outcomes for all.
Well, that feels like a good place to leave it for today. This has been incredibly insightful.
Glad we could unpack it.
We are waiting for you in our next paper review.